Hello, I'm Richard Foster, Chief Executive of infrastructure advisory and capacity building company Foster Infrastructure. I do a lot of my work in Australia, but I also work in a number of other countries. And I'm often asked, what is Australia's PPP law? The simple answer to that question is Australia doesn't have a PPP law. But there's something deeper in that, because the choice of how we implant a PPP framework in the particular legal and administrative system of a country depends upon the underlying legal and administrative system. Let's take a look. When we want to implant a PPP framework in the legal and administrative systems of a country, we need to first consider what type of legal system does the country have? Is it a common law system derived from the English common law, or is it a civil law system? And the key differences between these systems include the fact that under the English common law approach, much of the law has been developed through decisions of judges over time and isn't necessarily written down in legislation. In addition, in the common law system, government doesn't necessarily need a specific law authorising it to do something, such as enter into a contract. In contrast, in a civil law system, government typically needs a law that authorises it to act in a particular way, to create a legal relationship under a contract, for example. So let's take a look at how PPP laws have been implanted in some civil law systems. Here is Presidential Regulation number 38 of 2015 from the Republic of Indonesia. This is a key element of Indonesia's PPP framework. It's not a law passed as an enactment of the Parliament, but it is a regulation issued by the President, and therefore it is a document that has legal form and legal effect. In Thailand, there's the Private Investments in State Undertakings Act. This is an act of the Parliament. You can see it is written in legal language. It says what shall be done. It says what processes must be followed. It's very clearly a legally prescriptive and directive document. In Vietnam, we have the Decree on Public-Private Partnership Investment Form. This is just one component of Vietnam's PPP framework, and it really sits in with a network of laws that include the law on organisation of the government, the law on investment, the law on public investment, and so on. And again, it's written in very clear legal language, setting forth the sectors, conditions, procedures, and so on for implementation of PPP projects. Finally, here I have the Philippines amended BOT law and its revised implementing rules and regulations. The Philippines has an interesting history with PPPs. The BOT law was passed back when the Philippines faced an energy crisis, and it was a law that enabled a number of projects in the energy sector to be developed quickly and efficiently. It then fell into disuse to an extent. Then we had a new president come to power in the Philippines who wanted to reinvigorate the PPP program. Now, the president realised that passing a new or updated law was going to take some time, and so in order to get a quick start to the program, the president opted to issue an executive order with revised implementing rules and regulations for the PPP program, rather than waiting for a new Act of Parliament in order to do so. So once again, like the case in Indonesia, for example, we see a presidential order or regulation being used, but it is an instrument with legal effect that is quite prescriptive in terms of the procedures that are to be followed and the roles of the different entities within government. So how does that compare to common law countries? Let's take a look at Malaysia. This is the Public-Private Partnership Guideline issued by the Prime Minister's Department. If we open up that guideline, we can see that rather than being written in legal language, it's more like a descriptive report of what is typically done, what is good practice. We see here the typical PPP project structure. Likewise, in Singapore, another common law country, the Ministry of Finance has issued the Public-Private Partnership Handbook. And again, this talks about what is typical, what is good practice, what are the roles of the parties in descriptive terms, what should be done as far as possible rather than what must be done. And here in Australia, what is our PPP law? We don't have a PPP law because we are a common law country, and we've chosen to put in place a national public-private partnership policy framework. And again, this is a document that is not written in legal language. It's written in descriptive language of what is good practice, what are the key principles. And you can see here, it talks about principles such as value for money, considering the public interest, the optimal allocation of risks, and thinking about projects in terms of outputs. But it doesn't say this is the way things must be done. It talks in descriptive terms about what is good practice, and it leaves a lot of flexibility then for government to decide on a project by project basis how best to comply with and deliver on those principles. That's given you an overview of the different ways in which a PPP framework can be implanted in the legal and administrative traditions of a country. If you'd like to know more, a really good place to start is the PPP Certification Guide, developed as part of the Certified PPP Practitioner Program. Chapter 1 of the guide includes in Section 8 an overview of PPP frameworks, and then Chapter 2 of the guide takes you through all the detail of how to develop a PPP framework, what the important components are, what you'd need to think about. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been really useful for you.